The Damian Lillard situation got to a point that is so bad that the NBA had to get involved.
League advised both Lillard and Goodwin any future comments of the sort subject him to discipline, I'm told.
Buckle down, because this is going to change a lot of things in this situation.
Knock off any potential rhetoric about only wanting to be traded to Miami.
Before we get to the content, we're doing a huge giveaway for my Twitter followers. $1,000 split between 5 followers of mine on Twitter, or sorry, X. And now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? On this channel, I always mention one particular theme, and that's the fact that the NBA is a gigantic game of asset management. If you're able to manage your assets properly, or if you have an edge on the competition by understanding the collective bargaining agreement better than any other team, then you can set yourself up to win multiple championships. And this became more and more clear to me when the NBA experienced a lockout in 2011, and a huge part of the collective bargaining agreement was the fact that the NBA commissioner David Stern didn't like the fact that the NBA's best rising star, LeBron James, just got up and left the Cleveland Cavaliers. One of the main reasons he may have done that was because there may have not been enough financial incentive to stay on the Cleveland Cavaliers. So what did David Stern do? Well, he added a rule that allowed your original team to pay said NBA star for an additional season and more per year than any other team in free agency. Meaning, if you wanted to leave your team in free agency, you were gonna have to take a pay cut. Well, there were still stars that got around that somehow. Dwight Howard had no problem leaving the Los Angeles Lakers to join the Houston Rockets because, well, the Houston Rockets have no state income tax, and California is pretty liberal on the taxing, if you know what I mean. But as time went on, there'd be brand new collective bargaining agreements introduced to create rules to ensure that the existing vision for building the perfect NBA team to make it to the NBA Finals would be altered, primarily because the NBA doesn't want the same team winning the NBA Finals each and every year. So you could say, in a sense, that over the past 5 seasons, they've accomplished their mission. Most recently, the NBA has been very extreme on rewarding players that remain with their existing team. Players can now sign a supermax contract extension if they're able to win an award or make it to the All-NBA team, which is why you saw Jaylen Brown get paid the most an NBA player has ever been paid in NBA history. So why am I bringing this up? Well, basketball players still want to make as much money as humanly possible. They're not going to be willing to take a pay cut just so they can have freedom to choose their next team. But what do players do? Well, a lot of players recently have decided to sign contract extensions with their existing team and then demand a trade shortly after. James Harden did it with the Houston Rockets, although that was more towards the tail end of his contract. The same was done with Paul George and Russell Westbrook. During their stint with the OKC Thunder, Paul George re-signed with the Thunder and then a season later would get traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. Russell Westbrook signed one of the first supermax contracts in NBA history, and then the OKC Thunder sent him to the Houston Rockets about a year later. So there's definitely a trend in the NBA where you'll see players having their cake and eating it too. And in the case of Russell Westbrook, well, the OKC Thunder already traded Paul George. They were clearly headed towards a rebuild, so they did their best to trade Russ wherever he wanted to go, and he went to the Houston Rockets. Now, things have changed since then, significantly. Probably the most extreme version of this was a year and a half ago when we saw Ben Simmons refuse to play any more games for the Philadelphia 76ers despite already being on a max contract until he gets traded to a different team. A lot of players are beginning to follow this suit. No longer are you hearing,
"Hey, I demand a trade."
You're beginning to hear,
"I demand a trade to this team in particular."
And well, it seems like the NBA has their latest case on this. We've mentioned how horribly the Portland Trail Blazers managed Damian Lillard's situation. Originally, when they got the number 3 overall pick and were in prime position to select Scoot Henderson, Damian Lillard urged the Portland Trail Blazers to do whatever they possibly can to trade that pick to bring in another all-star to team up with Dame so the Portland Trail Blazers could contend in the West. I've said multiple times on this channel that there isn't a single player that you could trade that number 3 overall pick for to make the Portland Trailblazers a contender now. There's just no way. And the Portland Trailblazers seem to agree with this sentiment. It doesn't make sense to build around your 32-year-old star when the rest of your team on average is significantly younger than him. But regardless, for some reason, Damian Lillard wanted to continue leaning into this brand of his where he is established as a loyal player, and Joe Cronin would still give us interviews like this.
I think what I've learned more than anything is patience is critical. Like, don't be reactive. Don't jump at things just to seemingly solve a problem. So I think that's how my approach has been with this and will be with this, is we're going to be patient. We're going to do what's best for our team. We're going to see, how this lands. And if it takes months, it takes months.
Now, bear in mind, he said this after the Portland Trailblazers drafted Scoot Henderson. And this was a year after they drafted Shaedon Sharpe. The Portland Trailblazers have so many guards, all significantly younger than Dame, and they could essentially trade Damian Lillard to another team and get a significant amount of assets for him. But they took too long. They should have done this way before the NBA draft. They should have made their decision sooner, because they would have had all the leverage at that point. Yeah, you'll have teams and players saying,
oh my god, Damian Lillard was so loyal to the Portland Trailblazers, and this is how the Trailblazers repay him?
But at that point, the writing was on the wall. Damian Lillard was coming off of his best season to date. He is about to get paid $60 million a year in a few seasons from now, because he also signed his supermax contract extension. But all of a sudden, at the snap of your finger, Damian Lillard went from being one of the most loyal players in the NBA to demanding a trade, which I think at this point is normal. I don't think it needed to be official, because it seemed like the Portland Trailblazers were going to trade you anyways, if we're being honest. I mean, come on, they have like 4 guards on the roster at this point. It's clear that they're going to trade you. Well, in the middle of June, Jimmy Butler began recruiting Damian Lillard to the Miami Heat, which made a lot of sense. I mean, you could go to the Miami Heat, not that much taxes over there, so you could make good money. You could immediately contend on the Miami Heat. Definitely an option worth considering. Originally, Damian Lillard also said he'd be interested in the Brooklyn Nets, maybe the Boston Celtics. Eventually, it seemed like there was only one option for Dame, and this is primarily because Dame demanded his trade so late. Maybe it was tactical, maybe he did this on purpose to get to Miami, but Crispy Haynes would also tell us a month ago, Miami's focus is Portland superstar Damian Lillard, with a genuine belief that this could be the offseason. The veteran guard seeks a change of scenery, league sources tell NBA TNT and Bleacher Report. He wouldn't just demand a trade, he would demand a trade to one team and one team in particular, the Miami Heat. Despite interest from other teams, Damian Lillard remains adamant that he only wants to play for the Miami Heat. And even Shams Charania said that the Miami Heat appear to be the most likely destination for Damian Lillard, and rival teams are hesitant to offer a compelling package without assurance that Lillard would be happy to join them. So it got to a point where it was clear, and even Damian Lillard's agent said this, he would only play for the Miami Heat, as reported by Shams Charania. Look,
I'm told Damian Lillard only wants to play for the Miami Heat. Joe Cronin go through the league and track the market and see what else he can get at the age where a preferred destination is the likely path. Damian Lillard deal, you're going to want assets, young players potentially moving forward, but definitely getting picks in a potential Lillard trade.
It got so bad that Damian Lillard's agent said that if any other team traded for Damian Lillard, and bear in mind, the other team at this point was only the Boston Celtics. So he pretty much said any other team trading for Damian Lillard would result in Damian Lillard not reporting to camp. First of all, the Boston Celtics, there was probably like a 20% chance of that happening. This was before the Jaylen Brown contract extension. They clearly decided to go in a different direction, and I think this direction makes more sense for them. Bringing in Kristaps Porzingis, trading Marcus Smart, trading for a lot of draft capital, trying to develop role players on rookie scale contracts, giving Jaylen Brown the supermax. This is what made more sense for the Boston Celtics. But let's say the Celtics were interested in Damian Lillard. Isn't the goal here in this stage of your career to compete for a championship? Boston's a great city to compete for a championship for. And this is coming from a Laker fan. Sports are very important to Boston fans. You would be a legend in Boston if you were able to bring home a Larry O'Brien trophy. So it's kind of interesting that Dame said that I am only going to play for the Miami Heat and that's it. And it seems like the NBA isn't too fond of this trade demand, because on Friday, a memo was sent to all 30 teams about Damian Lillard's trade request and the stance that he only wants to play for Miami. And Shams Charania tells us best.
The NBA sent a memo to its 30 NBA teams informing them that they have interviewed Damian Lillard and his agent Aaron Goodwin about his stance that he only wants to play in Miami, and the league advised both Lillard and Goodwin that any future comments of the sort will be potentially subject him to discipline, I'm told, as well as a warning to the NBPA that any future comments that are similar to the ones as far as I only want to play for this specific team in a trade request to potential discipline as well.
So we're essentially in a situation where the NBA is declaring war on Damian Lillard. And the reason why is very obvious. Damian Lillard has so much leverage in this situation in the sense that he's scaring off other teams from trading for him. But if he really wants to get to Miami, he could. The way he's doing that is threatening not to play at all whatsoever. Now, historically, I've mentioned instances of this occurring. I've mentioned situations where stars said, hey, if you trade for me, I'll just leave when my contract's over. My favorite example of this is when Paul George was traded to the OKC Thunder. Originally, he didn't want to stay with the Thunder. He ended up signing a contract extension with the Thunder, played there for a little bit more, and then eventually got traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. But in an instance where a player quite literally got traded to another team and left after winning a championship is none other than Kawhi Leonard. But in this case, both scenarios, both of these players ended up playing. One of them even won a championship and is considered to be the greatest Toronto Raptors player of all time. But in this case, Damian Lillard says it's Miami or bust, and other teams are afraid of trading for him, and as a result, the NBA sent out a memo. Now, Sam Amico brings up the fact that he keeps hearing that the NBA would veto any Lillard trade to the Heat. Don't think it's entirely true. It's what people around the league are telling me they foresee. A lot of people like drawing parallels to the Chris Paul situation when the Los Angeles Lakers traded for Chris Paul to pair with the late great Kobe Bryant, and then the NBA vetoed the trade. That situation, and something that's not really talked about as much in that situation, which by the way created one of the greatest what ifs in NBA history, was in a unique scenario at that point. At the time, the New Orleans Hornets didn't have a NBA owner at all whatsoever. So in the meantime, the NBA commissioner and the NBA acted as the owner of the New Orleans Hornets. And did they have some sort of agenda here at this point? Yeah, totally. You could make an argument that they did. In this case, my assumption is, one, they didn't want the Los Angeles Lakers to become a super team like the Miami Heat, and two, Blake Griffin was going viral all over the internet as a result of his captivating rookie year, and they wanted to get him a very good point guard that is known for his abilities as a playmaker to make him a lob threat consistently and set him up so he could continue to drop highlight reel after highlight reel, because that's good for the NBA. They wanted Blake Griffin to go mainstream. Makes a lot of sense as well. So did the NBA have an agenda? I'm sure they did, but was it within their rights to veto that trade? Yes. In this case, the NBA isn't going to just pull up out of nowhere and say,
hey, this trade isn't fair, we're gonna veto it.
No, rather what the NBA is saying is what Damian Lillard is doing here is a little messed up, and they don't want a situation where the Miami Heat barely give up any assets at all whatsoever, which they're famous for doing, by the way. They've done this a lot in the past in order to get Damian Lillard on the roster. Immediately, you heard a switch up, like almost instantly, where Damian Lillard assured the NBA that he will give any team in the league his all-out effort. Aaron Goodwin and Damian Lillard affirmed to us that Lillard would fully perform the services called for under his player contract in any trade scenario. The relevant teams provided descriptions of their communications with Goodwin that were most, though not entirely, consistent with Goodwin's statements to us. It's kind of funny that they're doing this now and they didn't have a problem when Anthony Davis demanded a trade or when Kevin Durant demanded a trade, but I'd say the main difference between Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant and the Damian Lillard trade scenario is the fact that the Brooklyn Nets got a significant amount of capital in return for Kevin Durant. They completely replenished the assets that they lost from the James Harden trade. In the case of Anthony Davis, yeah, it was clear that he wanted to go to the Lakers, but the Lakers gave up one of the craziest hauls in NBA history. Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, multiple first-round picks. I mean, that was more than enough compensation compensation for the Pelicans. The NBA is just trying to prevent a situation where the Heat intimidate the Portland Trailblazers into giving up Damian Lillard for nothing. And I guess they fear this because of what they saw with Bradley Beal and the Washington Wizards, where the Wizards were essentially able to donate Bradley Beal and other young talent to the Phoenix Suns for second-round picks and some pick swaps. But in that case, Bradley Beal had a no-trade clause. So I'm assuming that's what the NBA is trying to prevent. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about all this? Does the NBA have the right to declare war on Damian Lillard? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.